Hello, good evening. I'm Francis Nordanis, and I'm pleased to bring you an occasional vidcast for the Anglican community of St. Mark. This evening, I'm joined by Steve Maina, our Protector Bishop, and Fraser. What is your surname, Fraser?
Well, it's always been McDermott.
McDermott, there we go. You're always Fraser to me. Fraser McDermott, who is the chairman of our Anglican Community of St. Mark board. They recently had an excellent adventure. They went to a conference in Florida representing ACM, Communion Partners, and they came back quite excited and with a lot to share. So I'm simply going to ask Bishop Steve and Fraser, what did you experience and what might it mean for us in the province here?
Thank you, Francis. I think I should let Fraser go first because he wrote me into it. Fraser, why did you invite me to go to this thing?
Well, can I go back just a couple of steps? Over the last sort of 12 or so months, we've been connected to an organization in Canada which have been struggling with similar issues to the province in New Zealand, and they were looking for partnership and collegiality. And they heard that we'd done some work and we'd created a community, so they wanted to connect with us. And that was via Thomas Brewer, who used to be the vicar of Sumner Redcliffs, and he moved back to Canada and found out about this organization. So over a period of about 12 months, we'd had a number of repeated Zoom conversations and felt a real synergy, a real connectivity of heart and mind about wanting to see a future for the Anglican Church, but also wanting to celebrate that which are the historic documents of the church, the Bible and the prayer book and all sorts of things like that. And as we were talking, just say, how can we work more effectively together? And the chair of that organization connected us with, or invited us to a larger, wider conference that was going to be happening in Florida under an organization's name who's Communion Partners. Now, Communion Partners are part of the Episcopal Church of America, but they're determined to stay within the province, even though they theologically disagree with some of the decisions and statutes that the organization has been running or has been making. So they extended the arm of fellowship to us, and it was primarily an Episcopal gathering. There were about 70 people there, and a majority of them, or a lot of them, were bishops. And so, not having the right coloured shirt, I felt it was only appropriate to invite our Protector Bishop to come along as well, which he graciously decided to do, and it was lovely. So in the beginning of January, Steve and I travelled all the way over to Orlando, which took an inordinate amount of time to get there. But what we did is we found a pile of friends. We found, I was fearful or apprehensive, thinking that we would find a group of angry people about the state of the church. And actually, there was nothing further from the truth. These were men and women, godly men and women who loved the Lord and wanted to see the church flourish and thrive, and also to, as I said, uphold the historic documents of the church. So we went along, we were invited to speak there, but also we heard a lot of the different things that have been going on in the background and a worldwide perspective, what's happening in the communion. There were Zoom interviews coming in from different parts of the States and from England as well. There were about 70 of us there, and I think about 30 bishops. So, and it was really, really good. Very, very exciting indeed. And yeah, I think what we did is we just shared our journey. So Steve very kindly suggested that I give the presentation, which I did, and really just sort of opened up the journey that we've been on in the creation of our community. And the thing that I left us with I think is, and the thing that we're learning as a community ourselves is, we want to be known by what we stand for, not what we stand against. And so really what the Lord's been capturing my heart and imagination with is how can we build a church that actually glorifies God and gives people hope for the future. And so I put a plea out to the communion partners, and I think they've got the same DNA that we have. And what we want to do is to be able to see if we can join hands, as it were, around the world to create or to help work as friends in the same direction to be a positive voice in the worldwide communion of the church there. So Bishop Greg Brewer was the head of that, and he came away really encouraged to hear the journey we've been on and the fact that we were still standing and actually still in love with the Lord and seeing a bright future for the church. So I think that's really, it was about 3 days, wasn't it? Or 2 days, Steve, wasn't it?
Yeah, 48 hours. Yeah.
Yes, lots of networking. It was very, very good. What's your recollection, Steve?
Thanks, Fraser. Thanks. That's a very good summary, and thanks again for inviting me to come along. I really enjoyed being with you, having a Kiwi with me to be able to share our own experience and to see the areas of connection. But one of my highlights was, again, you go to these places and you're not too sure what you're going to find. The American church is huge and it's broad. And it's actually perhaps more higher than I thought it was. You know, I think Nelson Anglican is a bit lower church, so it's more high church. And so there were differences in terms of, okay, getting a sense of what the context is over there. But as Fraser says, we found friends. We found there was nothing that was said in that conference that I did not resonate with. So, for example, Bishop Greg Brewer, who is the chair of Communion Partners Standing Committee, gave a talk about the motivation for starting Communion Partners. And he said that they found that the general convention politics required them to find a way of supporting and encouraging one another. The General Convention is the equivalent of General Synod for us here. And so they found about a dozen bishops who are committed to renewal within the Episcopal Church. And basically they felt the need to be able to support the least, those people who are paying a huge price for the gospel. Because of choosing to be able to stand for the gospel. And I thought I resonate with that, you know, because even in New Zealand, you know, we may have people who are in a similar context. And they also wanted to establish a place of fellowship for like-minded people, as Fraser has said. And they wanted a place of to give people hope for the future and refreshment. And so I think the heartbeat of Communion Partners was being able to strengthen God's people so that they'll be able to serve faithfully in the places where God calls them. So these are the stayers. These are the people who've chosen to stay in those places where God has called them. And so how can Communion Partners be able to support them as they serve in those places? And they had sort of three key areas of priorities as he outlined that morning: support for bishops, building strong international fellowship, including with the Global South, and support for rectors or vicars of those parishes. And so I thought, you know, I resonate with all of that really, because within the sort of evangelical orthodox space, it's not helpful for us to be divided and for us to be isolated. We need one another and we need to support each other. And so within those 48 hours, not only did we hear about the context of the church, the Episcopal Church in America, and the things that they are seeking to deal with, but we also had a great heart for the gospel. There were topics there about renewal. There were personal testimonies and stories that were shared, some very, very real stories of people's journey, some of them with health issues, others with burnout, and just ways in which those leaders are seeking to lean on Jesus for renewal and refreshment for them. We gathered around and prayed for those who are going through need. We had chapel services where the Bible was opened. There was opportunity for fellowship around meals. And so it just felt like, although we had come so many thousands of miles away, it just felt like these are our people. This is part of our team. This is Fano. And I was deeply encouraged by that. So I think my takeaway from that conference, again, sometimes you need to be removed from your context to go to another context to reflect on your own experience, was questions that Christopher Bailey, director of the Church of the Incarnation in Dallas, said. He said that for them, the question that they're asking is, what does fruitful and flourishing ministry look like? Because they do not want to be an issue-driven organization. They want to be a renewal and ministry and mission movement. They see themselves as a mission society. So they are not seeking to compete or overstep episcopal structures from an ecclesiological perspective, but they see themselves as a mission movement or a mission society. And I thought, well, that's exactly what we're trying to do here in Aotearoa, New Zealand. And I deeply resonated with that sort of spirit of not becoming known for what we are against, but what we are for, and seeking the flourishing and renewal of the church, and doing that through supporting and encouraging one another, those who have chosen to stay within the Episcopal Church. So I came back renewed, encouraged. I think Fraser would agree with me. There is also a sense that even though we are small in New Zealand, it seems like what we are doing at ACM is being noticed globally. That there's something that we, in terms of how we are formed, because Communion Partners are still trying to think about their structures. We already have a structure that is actually entrenched within our canons, and so there was a sense in which they thought, oh, okay, well, there's something we could do. So not only did we receive much from our brothers and sisters from Communion Partners, but we felt, as Fraser spoke, we felt there was a sense in which they were curious about what God was doing here, and they wanted to connect with us. And I think there are lots of possibilities in terms of exploring what that could look like.
A number of the people there actually wanted the address that I gave in order that they could chew back over it again, and it's gone to some bishops actually in the UK now, as they are trying to wrestle with how does a safe place to remain exist when the waters are so turbulent from a political and ecclesiological point of view. And so it seems to me that God has taken us through a fire in order that we can help other people endure the fire, and to say that there is hope on the other side, as it were. So, we're encouraged. We got to meet the Bishop of the Arctic Circle, which is the largest diocese, I think, in the world. It's extraordinary. The Bishop of the Dominican Republic, Bishop of Honduras, the Bishop of Bermuda, the Bishop of Florida, a couple of retired bishops from Houston, and a retired Archbishop of Nigeria.
That's correct.
Bishop Josiah. What a great and godly man he was. And he was very excited to hear what we were doing, because he had a really important role in the communion for a while. Steve, could you remind us what that role was?
Yeah, he was the General Secretary of the Anglican Communion. Yeah.
And he was so excited.
Yeah.
And feel that we've made a real good friend then.
Yeah, correct. So it was quite a diverse group of people, and lots of opportunities to connect with one another with that group. And I also did, or I think Fraser and I did our usual sort of scheming to try and find out whether there were people we could invite to come along. So Fraser talked about inviting people to come and climb a volcano. And, and I was trying to recruit, okay, who wants a sabbatical? You can come to New Zealand and do a bit of a sabbatical and do some local ministry. So there was a bit of encouragement there. And I'll tell you one more thing that I was really challenged by. I felt very convicted by the Bishop of Central Florida, because what he's doing is that his diocese is growing and flourishing, so much so. I mean, he's been ordaining. He's only been a bishop for 18 months or something like that. And he's ordained so many people. Young people are coming through. It's a diocese to be a part of. But for me, it's his posture of generosity to be able to say, well, I can't keep all these people in my diocese, so I'm happy to ordain them and send them out to other
Yeah.
places as missionaries, and I was really intrigued by that sense of call to be a missionary diocese, a diocese that equips and raises up leaders and sends them out as missionaries in other places that are in great need. And I wonder whether there's an invitation in here in Aotearoa, New Zealand, not just to be thinking about ourselves and the wonderful things that are happening here, whether you're thinking diocese, whether you're thinking parish, but to think of how God could use us, places that are flourishing and growing and developing, where there's lots of young leaders. They're not there for that parish only or for that community, and to cast a vision, a missionary vision beyond local churches, local dioceses, for the whole country, for the whole region, really. So that was quite encouraging for me to hear what that bishop is doing.
Another thing that I was particularly encouraged by, there was another bishop called Bishop Fraser. I'm always encouraged by any bishops called Fraser. It's wonderful.
It's a good name.
Bishop Fraser Loudon, I think his name was. And he was invited to represent Communion Partners at a congress or a meeting of the Global South in Cairo last year. And he was just sitting there. He was invited to be to audit it. I can't remember what's it. So a non-vocal position, but to hear what's happening from a global perspective, the different movements, the different concerns, the different passions, and the desire. The thing I got from it was that there's a desire to hold the communion together rather than tear it apart. And there's a lot of movement that I hear in different Anglican streams that the Lord's given up on the Anglican Church, we might as well pull it apart, reinvent it. And to see the work that these men and women are doing in the corridors of prayer and Congress, to be able to say, do you know, this is a beautiful thing that the Lord has made, and actually it's worth investing in. And so these godly men and women, bishops and all sorts of evangelists and things, trying to say, how can we face these crises, which will happen, they haven't happened through millennia anyway, but how do we face these crises without it being a crisis of identity?
Yeah.
And just to be able to see that Communion Partners has got this ability to be listened to, and I think there's hope for us for the future, for us to be part of something wider like that, to look at how we might be able to continue to knit together, not to reinvent the work that we're doing, but to actually use our strengths that we've got globally to work together for hope for the church.
Absolutely, and I think, and part of what we do, I mean, you might be asking the question, why did we spend so much money, carbon footprint to travel to Florida for this? Couldn't we do something on Zoom? My conviction is that to be able to do that, to be able to be a part of this sort of global movement of like-minded people, we need relationships. So being able to be eating meals together, spending time together, building trust is vital for us to connect with one another. So it's not just issuing statements, but it's actually about relationship with one another. And so that's why we went to Florida. And that's why as opportunities come, hopefully Fraser and I can connect with other movements globally that are seeking to, sort of engage in the same space, to learn from one another, to connect with each other, to pray together, and to together discover what is it that God is doing, because we need one another. We need to hold hands with each other going forward.
Absolutely. Yeah. Very encouraging.
Yeah. So what do you think, Fraser, is the next step for us as we, coming back from Florida, ACM, where we are at? What do you think would be the next step in terms of how we might apply some of what we picked up from Florida into the churches that are part of ACM, or churches that are perhaps exploring whether they want to join ACM? Why is this important for churches in Aotearoa to connect with one another, something similar to Communion Partners?
Absolutely. You sound like either a university lecturer sitting me an exam or an essay paper. Well, first of all, I mean, some really good news. Yesterday, another church joined the community.
Great.
So that Lenfield Community Churches has become a part of the Anglican community of St. Mark. So we're a growing organization, and we have to celebrate that. This is simply wonderful. The second thing I think is I've come back with a renewed desire to strengthen churches, to actually show what we can do to the world under God, what's possible in the way that we can be a blessing to churches, as these guys are desperately trying to be as well. But Bishop Greg was really struck by the fact that we said what we want to do is we want to build stronger churches,
yeah,
who have a confidence in the gospel and a confidence in their place in the church. And so he wanted to encourage us about that. And so I think what it's done is it's redoubled my determination for us to really invest in the church. So we've got this Regen conference coming up in May. I mean, if you've not booked it, if you're looking at this interview and you've not booked on, have a look at Eventbrite for Regen 24. It's supposed to be a national conference held in Auckland. And we'd love to see as many people as possible come. Why? Because we believe in strengthening the church. And the only way that we're going to strengthen the church is not via a Zoom meeting, as lovely as Zoom is, but as Steve said, getting face-to-face and doing relationship. Getting hands laid on one another, being prayed for, being in a room full of people that you can lay your defenses down and just worship the Lord with one another, that there is a united understanding and language that we can communicate without having to put caveats in. So, and then I think what also that's sort of the national work really is we need to redouble our efforts. But also I think it really does say to us, Aotearoa, New Zealand, we think of ourselves as 3 small little islands, but actually we can have an enormous global impact. And not to be shy in standing up and being counted. And that's almost countercultural to who we are as a people. You know, we like to downplay a lot of things, but actually God is doing a work in us, and I can see through us by the encouragement that we're getting from Canada, from Bermuda, from Alaska, from Florida, from all over the place. And so for us to be able to respond positively to invitations for relationship. Yeah. And so we're working quite hard right now, trying to build bridges into Tikanga Māori. We're wanting to go and also to go to Tikanga Pacifica, because we believe that we're a cross Tikanga movement. So we need to do some work on that as a community, because each church needs life, each church needs hope, and each stream of the Tikanga brings a different dynamic of what that hope looks like. And we need to learn here how to express that in a 3 Tikanga and yet 1 Christ model.
That's awesome. That's great. That's great, Fraser.
What do you think, Steve? What do you think the hope is? What do you come back with?
Wonderful. Just 2 more things to add. One is to say, I think we need to be intentional about creating something similar to Communion Partners, where Anglicans from across the evangelical, conservative, orthodox space could actually meet together. I feel like we used to have sort of a gathering of a similar nature. I think when we had some farm conferences or FCA, but over the last few years we haven't had a gathering of that nature. So I think Fraser and I and others are committed to try and find a way in which we can create a conference where like-minded people in New Zealand, Aotearoa, New Zealand, in our region gather together. So watch the space to see what's going to happen, because a gathering of that nature is important. So that's the first thing. And then second is to say that the gospel expands not through human effort, but through God's power. And so what that means is that gospel renewal of our hearts and of our communities is important. And so we as Nelson Diocese, and I know some ACM, our farm parishes, are seeking to be able to figure out what revitalization looks like. It's revitalization, it's actually gospel revitalization. And so we've invited City to City, Australia, to come and look under the hood and help us review our parishes. But what we're longing for is gospel renewal of our lives, of our leaders, of our communities. And so if you're listening to this and your church is not sort of connected to some of the work that is happening in revitalization, give Fraser a call, or Paul a call, or me a call. Would love to invite you on a journey that helps you as a leader to figure out what that could look like in your context, because we sometimes need someone else outside ourselves to be able to help us on that journey of gospel renewal. It's where we lean on God's power, saying that we cannot do it in our own strength. We've tried these models, they have not worked, but we believe that God is at work to renew his church. And so we need help, and I think it's good to be able to accept help, especially in moments when some of our churches are at a crossroads about what the future looks like. So I've come back even more encouraged that the work we're doing in terms of revitalization is even more important, and we need to be encouraging one another in that space as well.
Yeah. I think just one more thing, because you're just sparking this, Steve. I love chatting with you, because we get to see things that from a different perspective when we talk, and just the importance of knowing what's going on globally.
Yeah.
Very often, just as a church leader or just sitting within my diocese, we can get consumed with the worries and the woes of day to day, and feel that we're alone. And actually, to be connected, to understand that there are wider things happening and that we are part of it, is really important. And that's refreshed me to go, actually, what we're doing here is part of God's global action.
Yeah.
And it's not just by accident that this has happened. And so we need not to feel that we're the lonely goat in the faraway paddock. There is a larger work that's going on, in which God is showing his glory even through us here, miles away from everybody.
Yeah, I agree. And the fact that those are the people who are part of the group, who are part of the church, have interest, even prayer interest in what's happening here. Isn't that a huge encouragement,
Yeah.
And so we have brothers and sisters around the group that are interested in our own journey and what God is doing here. As a huge encouragement for us, that we were invited to be part of this, that they were keen to listen to us, they wanted to fellowship with us. Bishop Greg emailed to ask us how we're getting on, and emailed Fraser to say how can he pray for us. And I thought, well, he's got a whole of America to think about. He's got time to think about us and to pray for us. So yeah, you are not alone. There are others who are also seeking to look to Jesus and to look to God, and we are together in this space. So yeah, that's a huge encouragement. I think Fraser and I will do everything we can to sort of be an encouragement to those that are seeking that encouragement, who may feel isolated. I know that there are those who feel very isolated in communities. So if there's anything we can do to sort of rope you in, I know that sometimes even here in New Zealand, those more people don't get to hear what's happening. People don't get to hear, there's a conference happening. Sometimes you hear, someone is coming through, but I didn't hear about it until after the fact. So perhaps there's an opportunity for us to try and find ways of getting people onto databases where they can receive information. So again, I'll be saying, if you're listening to this and you're not connected into some sort of a place where you can receive updates, information, get plugged in. You're not alone, and we want to be an encouragement to you as well. Yeah.
Absolutely.
Well, thank you both very much. You've come back, both of you, to my ears with a stronger and deeper sense of our identity. That word came up at one point. And if I just may reflect, the three things I'm hearing, the first thing about identity, because ACM was birthed in crisis, and your thinking is well beyond that. The first thing is we're stayers. It's a small, down-to-earth word, but very useful. The second thing is mission-focused, really wanting to advance the gospel. see the church grow. And the third thing that really comes through strongly now is connected, and connected globally and internationally. And realizing that once again, New Zealand is that funny little laboratory at the bottom of the world where things germinate and take shape very quickly, and in a way that can be of use and blessing to others. Thank you very much. Is there any last thought or gem still with you?
Well, I think we have to leave that to our bishop.
Yes, yes, yes.
Well, no, thank you, Francis. Thanks, Fraser. I think we've said it all. All I can say is God is at work, and we are not alone. And let's keep finding ways of supporting one another in what God is doing here, and linking hands with others globally who are part of this movement, this gospel movement. And so, could I offer a prayer, a blessing?
Yes,
And so may the God of hope fill you with all joy and peace as you trust in him, so that you may overflow with hope by the power of the Holy Spirit. Amen.
Amen. God bless you.
Thank you both very much, and may this be a blessing to all who listen.
Thank you. Thanks very
Thank
much,
you.
Francis. Thanks, Fraser.
Right. Bless you.
Blessings.